anything about politics. So, if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know that it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, that is what this show is for. It is for all of y'all to be able to ask any questions about politics without any kind of fear or judgment or roasting or anything of that nature. This is not one of those shows where people fight amongst themselves. This is not that world. This is a world where people have good, productive conversations about politics, where they discuss things and nobody's trying to win. Nobody is trying to own another person. They are just trying to engage in good faith and potentially hash out any disagreements that they have policy wise. But this is, it takes all kinds here. We can have people who don't know anything about politics. We can have people who want to know want to get into the details of things and, flesh some of that stuff out. Let's see here. We're living in weird times. Trevor Lewis says, does APAC control our politicians? APAC, just like every other organization that has access to a lot of money, have influence over our politicians. I would not say that they control our politicians, Trevor. Um, but yeah, that it's a bigger problem than APEC. It is every billionaire. It is every extremely well-funded organization that can swing primaries against politicians who stand up against them. Raysk says, "Do you think politics divide people? They don't have to, Ray, but it has been engineered to do so by the billionaire class in order to get people fighting amongst themselves instead of actually recognizing that we're all getting fucked by the billionaire class and it's not immigrants or Republicans or anything like that." Excellent first questions, everybody. Zero on the Run says, how does someone operating outside the influence of dark money, PAC money, or wealthy donors win? So it's difficult. And this is where I have a lot of sympathy for any politician who is engaging in having a super PAC or getting money from a PAC or wealthy donors or anything like that, because unless you are unless you have like massive name ID and a huge ground operation, unless you can really break through the information environment like a Mamdani or an AOC or something, you're kind of fucking yourself if you don't accept those funds, because then you don't have any resources in order to run your campaign. And the politicians who do break through are so rarer than the number of politicians that we need to be able to win elections in order to see the kind of good progressive change that we want to see. So, yeah, it's difficult. You have to be really creative about your messaging strategy, about your politicking. It takes a lot of time and energy, to build up your coalition, to build up your base. And maybe we can get more Mamdanis and AOCs to do that work. But in the meantime, what the most important thing is that we elect people who do take donations, but who are committed to actually changing our campaign finance laws so that money does not have such a massive influence over our campaigns. And then people with a lot of money don't have to have a lot of influence over our politicians. And if the Democrats that we elect don't do that, then we primary them and replace them with Democrats who will. Comedy Cop says, are you a Democrat or an American? I am both a Democrat and an American, Comedy Cop. Seth says, is there a point in voting for president since there is an electoral college? 100%, Seth. Even no matter where you live, swing state, red state, blue state, your vote makes a massive difference. And so I encourage everybody to vote. Trent Eats Water 3 says, get a job. I already have a job. Fucking your mom. Zero on the Run says, semi non sequitur, none of that matters unless we halt the departments of the National Guard to deployment of National Guard to blue states. The Trump administration is doing everything they can to make it seem like they have complete and utter control over the country and that it will be impossible to use voting to replace them. And they do have the ability to make it a lot harder, but they do not have the ability to stop it. They're going to try. They're going to do a bunch of really shady shit, for over the next year and a half or whatever. But whether they are successful is completely up to us. And if we do a lot of work, then we can outwork every shitty thing that they tried to do. Cowboy Kami says, what do you think about dialectical materialism? That's a little over my head, I guess. Test while test says, I requested if you're taking guests. I mostly don't take guests, but if you ask a couple questions, prove to me that you're here in good faith, potentially I will have you up when things slow down. Jack of all trades says he wants you to ask politics just so he can push socialist ideas to you by reading his book. No, that is not what I'm doing here, but good guess, I suppose. Malatsard the Great says, what do you think about the Israeli influence over government politics? I am against any well-funded organization having an outsized influence in our politics. This is one of the reasons why I think we should repeal Citizens United, and I think we need more strict campaign finance laws to get money out of our politics. AIPAC is not the only, malicious organization that is exerting unjust influence over our politicians, and I think that it is the real example of anti-Semitism is the fact that for some reason we're only focused on AIPAC when the Heritage Foundation is fucking out there and Peter Thiel and Elon Musk are fucking out there, Ace says, thoughts on the victims of Epstein coming together and say they will make their own list? Good. I'm so proud of them. Great for them. I know that the world, that this country, that's just generally the zeitgeist is to tear down women who come forward around sexual assault charges. And, I'm just really happy that they have overcome that. And I'm sure that they're going to feel some sort of negative consequences for speaking out. And I pray for them that they are safe and that it does not disrupt their lives all that much. But it is. I'm happy that they're doing it. G Money on the Fly Tip says, will Pete Buttigieg be a good candidate for president in 2028? He might be. I think he's a really good communicator. But I think that the Democratic electorate is nervous around nominating anybody who isn't just a straight white man because they have seen a woman and a woman of color get beaten by the worst candidate in presidential history, Donald Trump, and so they're like, we just got to play it as safe as humanly possible. That's not really necessarily how I feel. I believe just vote for the person that you want the most. Let's not play politics with our primary. But I don't know how convincing my argument is going to be for people not to do that. Let's see here. Robert Rodriguez says Buttigieg is polling at 0% with black people. Well, polls move, polls change. Trevor Lewis says, should we allow dual citizens to serve in our government? Trevor Lewis, I've heard this talking point before, and I have no idea if it is accurate. Rare Juice says, will Donald Trump give us our reparations? 100% not. He'll take more money from you, but he's definitely not going to, he's definitely not going to give you more than before he was elected. Atero says, guys ignore me purposely. No, I'm not. Migi Wara says, are you a Trumpy? No, I am not. Tony Montana says, tell us about Taliban regime. Sure. Trump gifted Afghanistan to the Taliban right before he left office, and now Afghanistan is under control of a terrorist organization. So congratulations, Republicans, for doing that. Jay Black says pro-communism. I mean, I'm pro-communism and socialism and capitalism. All those systems have their value. It just has to be balanced correctly, the way that they do like in Norway and Sweden and Canada and shit like that. Right. Rayer Jew says, is immigration reform going to help the black community? I don't believe so. Because I don't believe that immigration reform is going to help anybody. I don't think that there's a specific argument for removing immigrants from this country that will specifically help or hurt the black community, but it's just going to hurt everybody. All right. Tap says, who pulled out of Afghanistan? Well, the pullout was initiated by Donald Trump. He had a meeting with the Taliban to negotiate it. And once he realized that he lost the election, he basically just gave Afghanistan to the Taliban and said, all right, yeah, we'll be out of there in like 5 days or whatever. The Biden administration came in and tried to fix that, but, they were dealt a really shitty hand. So, it is a miracle that it went as well as it did, considering the position that Trump put Biden in. Average Joe PG, great to see you again. Can you tell your listeners to call their reps and tell them to support House Resolution 473 and Senate Resolution 224, ceasefire and humanitarian aid for Palestinians, and stopping military funding and weapons to Israel? Yeah, guys, call your reps. Call your reps and tell them to stop sending money and weapons to Israel, everybody. and to put pressure on Israel to allow more humanitarian aid in, to pressure Israel to allow reporters in, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, Ciabatta Bread Boy says that's just false. Ha ha ha. What did I say that you think was false? Jay Black says the proposal for pullout was strategized before Trump and Biden, U.S. think tanks. Yeah, but Trump was the one who did it. Jay Black. It's so funny to me how everybody's willing to run circles and make a million excuses to protect Trump's idiocy and incompetency. Victor Chillin says when the Trump administration loses in court, do they take a financial loss? Who loses the money? That's a really good question, Victor Chillin, and I'm honestly not 100% sure. I want to say that because it is the United States government that is engaged in these lawsuits, like in trying to, pursue the legality of his executive orders, then it's lawyers that are paid for by the taxpayers, so it's tax money basically. Kirsten says John Kennedy said the shrimp would turn me into an alien from the movie Aliens. What a weird thing to say. The shrimp would turn me into an alien from the movie Aliens. John Kennedy? Did you mean RFK, Kirsten? Good Lord. You're hot, but I don't know what you're talking about. The Walmart shrimp. Robert Kennedy Jr. said the Walmart shrimp would turn me into an alien from the movie Aliens. The Senator John Kennedy. Senator John Kennedy? Is there a Senator John Kennedy right now? There is a Senator Kennedy. I don't think his first name is John, though. All right. Well, this has been a fun detour. Let's see here. Rare Juice says, "Why is the immigrant community doing better than the black community, aka owning more businesses?" I guess Rare Juice, that my assumption, without actually looking into the data and the statistics, would be that the immigrant community is pretty diverse. And so immigrants come from all sorts of different countries, predominantly Asian countries, predominantly white countries, and those immigrants are coming in with different kinds of resources where the black community has been just kind of mired in the repercussions of slavery and Jim Crow and, over policing and, overly harsh sentencing and plea deals and cash bail and just the whole critical race theory, the systems of America being set up in order to specifically, oppress the black community. So yeah, I don't think it's because America treats immigrants necessarily better than it treats black people, but it is just that America has been so singularly focused on keeping the black community oppressed that I think it is difficult to find a specific community that is doing worse because America hasn't been focused on them. Maybe black women specifically. Caden says scared to be white. No, I wouldn't say I'm scared to be white. Carmine says ain't shrimp banned in the Bible or something. I think so. I'm pretty sure it's not kosher, but I don't know depending on which version of the Bible you're looking at. Tony Montana says, why U.S. are waging an economic war against Cuba? I mean, the history of America and Cuba relations is long and storied. Short version, I guess, would be to say that it is a brown, somewhat socialist, communist country. And so where their failings exist, America can point to it and say, look at how bad socialism and communism is. And where their successes exist, America needs to do whatever they can to, hide that from the American people. Right, Positive Vibes' view on abundance politics. So I read Abundance. I read Ezra Khan's book. And, I do think that they make some very good points in that book about needing to eschew certain roadblocks because they have been weaponized by malicious actors like the billionaire class or Elon Musk, or because they are overly, maybe they're being weaponized by builders or greedy people in rich neighborhoods or some shit like that. And especially where they are projects that are sorely needed, like high-speed rail and transitioning to green energy and vertical farms and stuff like that. Where the book loses me is in how Ezra and his writing partner, whose name I forget, seem to direct the blame for this stagnation away from the primary instigators, meaning the Republican Party and the billionaire class. Like, it would be easier to build in California if the billionaire class and the Republican Party was not solely focused on stopping places like California from being able to build. And there are some mistakes that happen in blue states that do gum up the works and shit like that. But yeah, I would say largely we are looking at a system that is struggling because the people who profit from it struggling have a lot of resources to make it struggle. He also says some absolutely batshit bananas things in that book, like China is a repressive country, but they also have high-speed rail. And I'm like, what exactly are you advocating for here, Ezra Klein? So yeah, I think it's interesting. I think that Democrats need to be championing the idea of abundance. Like, we can have this. The Republican Party is all about talking about how you all need to tighten your belts so that billionaires can have more money. You all need to work harder to avoid polluted water and air, because these factories, we have so little, we got to give these factories free reign to pollute the air and the water and shit like that. We don't have enough money for the FDA to make sure that all your food is safe. Why don't you make sure your food is safe, you fucking lazy pricks, shit like that. And so I think that Democrats approaching it from an abundance style of, there is enough for everybody, and it is the wealthy class and the Republican Party that is creating a false drought of resources. I think that part is really important. I do think the Democratic Party should adopt that. But yeah, I have a lot of problems with that book, very, very specific problems. All right, B Action says advocating for progress is what I believe they're advocating for. Yeah, again, I like both of those guys, and just because I disagree with them on certain points and think that maybe some of their arguments were a little inelegant, does not mean that I think that they are valueless or bad people or are, like secretly Republicans or whatever. We can all have good faith disagreements in messaging strategies and political ideology and shit like that. Anima says, Trump or Kamala? What a weird question, considering that the election was over a long time ago. Did somebody forget to unplug a bot somewhere? Tony Montana says, was it legitimate to drop nuclear bombs on civilians? I don't believe that it was legitimate. I mean, it just depends on how you define legitimate. Like, was it legal via, the rules of war versus human rights? Or, we got to think about when it happened at the time, like what was legal back then, like I'm not really sure. Right. Let's see here. Crazy Monsoon says, Caden is saying anti-Semitic things about you. Who is this Caden person? Turn the nose filter off, buddy. What a funny thing to say. Everybody go ahead and report that dude for anti-Semitism. Thank you for the heads up, everybody. I appreciate that. All right, Rena, excellent to see you again. Thanks for being here. The Frenchie Lodge says, what do you think about this morning questioning towards Kennedy? Did RFK do a fucking thing? I didn't see that today. Rare Juice says, should welfare programs be directed to fundamentally black families knowing the history? I mean, I think that we need to be addressing poverty and inequality and food deserts and instability in every community where it exists, regardless if it is black or white or Indian or Asian or whatever. Yeah, I don't think that. I don't think I think we can do it all at the same time. And if we don't do it all at the same time, we're just kind of like, moving where the problem is instead of addressing it holistically. Jimmy Fallen is very funny. What's your opinion on the Palestine situation? I think that Hamas and the government of Israel are guilty of war crimes, so I don't support either of them. But it is clear that Israel is doing a genocide against the people of Palestine, and so we should be using all of our leverage to stop them, and that includes stopping sending them money and weapons. Avery says, should we ditch our current police model for more mutual accountability? I'm not really sure what you mean by mutual accountability. I will say that I think that policing in general needs reform. I think we need more community support mechanisms. Like, the police are getting called for people that have mental health issues. We should not be sending the police. We should be sending mental health experts, people that are trained to deal with that specifically. If somebody calls the cops because a homeless person is whiling out. Like I don't know if we need the police for that specifically. All right. Bean Dips says, "Have you seen the new Ligma policy?" That's pretty funny. JD Vance wants to bring it up. Wait a minute. Is that a real thing? I'm pretty sure you're doing the lick my balls thing, Bean Dips, but yeah. But it could be a real thing. I don't know. Avery says, by mutual accountability, I mean citizens and police should be held to the same standard. Community, yeah. I mean, I do not believe that we should be allowing police to do like extrajudicial murders the way there's sort of like what do you call it? There's so much legal cover for police, when they murder people. So yeah, 100%. Notification says, "What are your thoughts on abortion?" I am pro-choice, but even if you are pro-life, you should still vote for Democrats because the Republican platform does not actually decrease the number of abortions. It just makes pregnancy more dangerous for women. That is full stop. Blanca Catherine says, "Oh, I missed watching these. Have you heard about them using Angola as a new alligator Alcatraz?" I have not heard that, Blanca, but I know that they're using other countries to be our concentration camps, basically, which is absolutely fucking monstrous and terrifying. Notification says, "Wait, why do you support killing babies?" I don't support killing babies. Notification. I support a woman's right to choose. And I support giving doctors the resources to be able to save a woman's life if it is in jeopardy via, via what do you call it, ectopic pregnancies and other pregnancy, pregnancy complications. Max W says, "Are you actually scared about a country?" 100% I am. But the only way to not be scared is to do the work. Like if we all go out there and do the work to try to make this better, then we don't have to be worried because we're doing everything that we can. Let's see here. Yeah, I say worry about everything, stress out, freak out about nothing. When you're worried, when you're scared for the state of the country, go do something. And if you want to know what to do, I wowould say go to my Discord because I have things that you can do. I have great organizations you can volunteer for. I have great things that you can do within your community. If you don't want to work with other groups for some reason, if you want to start your own political action group, there's ways that you can do that in the Discord. Curtis says, "You seem scared." I mean, not as scared as your mom was when I told her I wasn't going to bang her anymore. Chad Gorecki says, "Why is Joe Flacco lecturing on politics?" I don't know who that is. Is that a good-looking person? Kate says, "Why should I practice radical empathy if they practice radical stupidity?" Well, Kate, I believe that there is value in turning the other cheek, being the bigger person. I think the more people that do that, there are ways that we can bring people out of that negative space without also being negative, bad people ourselves. Non-consensual alerting says, "Do you follow any particular religion?" No, I am agnostic. Blanca Catherine says, "Angola was a prison slave plantation in Louisiana." Oh, I thought it was a different country. Sorry. Showing my occasional idiocy here, everybody. Yeah, that's fucking, yeah, that is, it's a bad look, shall we say, to turn a former prison slave plantation into a concentration camp, It's on theme, you know. Notification says, "Thoughts on country borders?" It is fine for countries to have borders. I have no problem with countries having borders. Alrighty, let's see here. Tom C says, "Speaking of being the bigger person while in the same breath talking about banging someone's mom, well, what can I say? The reason why I was banging that dude's mom is because I am the bigger person. If you catch my meaning. Alrighty. Scrolling down to the very bottom. Mr. Swift Crashmore says, "Democrats tell us to trust the science, but then tell me a man can be a woman." I mean, a man can be a woman. Frogs change gender. You're saying frogs are better than humans? You know, why do you think there are frogs out there that are more capable of changing sex than humans? Seems weird that you would value humans and human ingenuity less than frogs. You know. Alrighty, excellent questions, everybody. Cuz, good to see you again. For better affordability to live in Hawaii, is Republicans or Democrats better? Republican policies are good for nobody. Cuz it is good for the rich, it is good for the whites, it is good for the Christian. But all of those groups very specifically can be fucked over by the Republican Party also, except for the rich. So yeah, you will always be better voting for Democrats than Republicans. Carmine says, "So is it a science thing or a partisan thing?" Huh? Yeah, exactly. Alrighty, everybody. Excellent questions so far. Thank you for being here. We're at almost 30 minutes of the live stream. We usually go about an hour. So get your questions in and I will answer them. We're having a great time today. The legend says, what is the color of the sky in your world? Blue. What about you? Where are you from, the legend? So, yeah, have I got anybody requesting to guest? Since questions have kind of calmed down a little bit. Let me see here. Oh, hey, Rare Juice. Are you still here, Rare Juice? Are you around? Hello? I cannot hear you, Rare Juice. Maybe you're still connecting. No? Well, let's get back into these questions then. Notification says, thoughts on Chicago. Chicago's a great city. I fucking love Chicago. I've been there a bunch of times. Non-consensual learning says, if Democrats have all the answers, why didn't they get it right when they were in office? That is an excellent question, non-consensual learning. So here is the answer to that. Okay. There are many, many, many ways in which trying to get things done and trying to fix things can be hampered. And the mechanisms by which, people who want to fuck with democratic process can use to fuck with democratic process are multitudinous. The Republican Party has been acting as obstructionist as humanly possible for a long time. They have weaponized the, what do you call it? They have weaponized the information environment to stop democratic progress. The, electoral systems are designed in a way to keep Democrats from getting elected. And so with fewer Democrats in Congress or in the judiciary, it is difficult for them to get things done. I can give you 1,000 examples of where Democrats tried to do the right thing, billionaires and the Republican Party stood in the way, and so we all got a lesser version of the very good thing that we wanted, Alrighty, but if you want me to go into more detail, non-consensual learning, let me know. I'm happy to. Let's see here. Notification says, thoughts on Texas? Texas is an okay state, I guess. It has been suffering under Republican rule for a really long time. Texas is a perfect example of how we give Republicans a pass on everything, where their energy grid was going down all the fucking time, and we weren't crying foul about, oh my God, this is the reason why fossil fuels is bad, everybody. Somehow that became against renewable energy, even though almost no energy in Texas was renewable at the time. But, one blue state, the energy goes out, and everybody's like, this is because solar panels are bullshit and climate change is a hoax, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, there's only two states that I really would not live in, and that is Texas and Florida. And it has nothing to do with the people there or the cities. It has everything to do with their governments. Alrighty. Okay. Hey Den says, this is the same party that didn't host a primary for their president-elect. What do you think they should have done, Hey Den, when they had only 100 days left until the election and states like Ohio were threatening to leave the Democratic candidate off of their ballot if they were not given the name before the DNC? What do you think they should have done? Had a nationwide primary in 5 days before the Ohio deadline was up? Hey Den, seems kind of bullshit to me that you think that is like some own that Democrats have put in a difficult position and tried to make the most and tried to do the best they could with it. Stephen Reynolds says they installed the last 3 presidential candidates. That is wildly false. There were primaries in every single race, and the people chose who they chose. So yeah, Stephen Reynolds, please don't just lie on my live streams or I'll block you. Alrighty, Swiftly Engaged says, crazy AOC working with Chip Roy. I like her, but always skeptical of politicians from my state. Yeah, I'm not really sure who Chip Roy is. I'm not really sure what the details of their working together is. Stephen Reynolds says, no, Bernie beat Hillary. Bernie 100% did not beat Hillary. I was canvassing for Bernie, and I know that Bernie fucking lost by a lot. Grosco says, there is a primary for Kamala. No, there was a primary for Biden in 2023, and he won. He won the primary, but then he dropped out. And so with 100 days left, there was no time to do a primary for a new candidate. They might have been able to do one at the convention, but there were a couple of states that were led by Republicans who were saying that unless you give us the name of your candidate before the convention, we're going to leave the Democratic candidate off of our ballot. Hugh Young says, do you think Trump is a good president? Absolutely not. One of the worst. Swiftly Engaged says, banning stock trading in Congress bill announced today. Yeah, I'm fine with Democrats partnering with Republicans when they want to do something good, you know. Right. Stephen Reynolds says, LOL, look it up. I have looked it up. So, you know, what are you talking about, Stephen Reynolds? Again, ask a question, stop lying, or I'm going to boot you. Ismu says, which country you are for, Palestine or Israel? I'm for every country, but I do not support the government of Israel, and I do not support Hamas. Dayglow Ginger, good to see you again. Why is this their talking point? They were never voting in the primary for Democrats. They do everything they can to poke holes in the sort of like moral fabric of being a Democrat, and they try to make everything hypocrisy. You know, where they're like, you claim to love democracy, but you didn't even let your voters pick the primary candidates in 2024, and it's like, well, you're ignoring a lot of relevant facts in there. You know. All right, Stephen Reynolds. Yeah, I don't need to look at your fucking bullshit false link, my guy. Let's see here. Excellent questions, everybody. We're at 30 minutes. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the gifts. I really appreciate all of your engagement and questions, etc. And if anybody wants to, you know, if anybody wants to ask a question, the time is now. And for anybody who just got here, my name is Jarrett. I don't fight with people. I am just here to answer good faith questions about politics. Danny is terrible. Excellent to see you again. Will the MAGA ever take accountability for worst president of my generation? You know, there's a book that came out a little while ago called One Day Everyone Will Have Been Against This. Depending on how things go. Because there is a world where we don't do the work and we allow the Republican Party to just steamroll us and cement their rule over our country and turn America into a dictatorship. And they get to rewrite the history books and say that Donald Trump was the new George Washington and he forged through a fairer and more free America for everybody and to return this country to its great white Christian roots, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, in that world, then nobody will ever be ashamed of having been a Trump supporter. But if we are able to stop them and maintain a free and fair democracy, then yes, 100%, people that voted for Trump and supported Trump will pretend like they did not. All right, Mrs. Compton says, "Did I miss you discussing what's going on with RFK Jr. today?" I do not know. I do not know. I have not seen anything specifically about the RFK thing. Jacob says, "Do you think white people have a culture?" I guess, but you know, there are a million different kinds of white people, and there's a million different kinds of white cultures. So it's like, you know, talking about preserving white culture never feels like anything more than a racist dog whistle to me. Let's see here. Papa Sibby says, "Do the doctors who sit on committee have a greater responsibility for holding RFK accountable?" I think so. I mean, they know even more that he is full of shit than everybody else. Let's see here. Mrs. Compton says, "Oh my God, you have to watch. Bernie just owned RFK Jr." I mean, I just can't stand listening to these fucking liars talk and lie and fucking bullshit and obfuscate and interrupt. Like any person in the Trump administration in a congressional hearing, they get their fucking tongue baths from the Republicans and they talk about how great they are. And then the Democrats come in and they try to actually do the work of holding people accountable. And then they just get yelled at and talked over. And then the person that they're interviewing lies and shit like that. And it just drives me fucking bananas. So, yeah. Unfucking believable. Damn Blackroyd. Super Dave, that's white culture, right? I'll accept Super Dave as my culture. That's for darn sure. Carmine says, maybe you should comment on daily news on here. You seem to be getting a lot of traffic like that. Yeah, I mean, there's just like stuff that happens during the live stream. You know, like I believe that the RFK thing is happening at the moment, like right now. Alrighty. Let's see here. Big T says Democratic Party is done. No, I am done. Fucking your mom because she got really clingy. Scrolling down to the bottom. RK says, heard about the Piolet program being rolled out. I don't know anything about that. Republicans play the game of no truth, all lies, all day. That is accurate. Chris Ortiz says, you understand that Trump is just an 80s and 90s liberal. He's what Biden was supposed to be. I reject that idea entirely, Chris Ortiz. So yeah, an 80s, 90s liberal. Yeah, no, 100% not. Scrolling down to the bottom, Jesse Lynn says, "How do you remain so calm? LOL. Are you a therapist by any chance?" I remain calm, Jesse, because I'm doing the work, and I do the work every day, and I take time off from doing the work. So every weekday I do the work, and on the weekends, me and my wife we watch movies and we eat good food and we see our friends. That's how I remain calm, is because I'm doing everything that I can. That's how you can all remain calm as well, is if you do work. If you do the work to try to stop what's going on, then the weight of it will not crush you. Let's see here. Mrs. Compton says, "Why do you think people go after looks when debating politics? It's happened so many times, even today." I think that there's a group of people on the right who reject the idea that we should not be making fun of people for the way that they look. And so they have the double benefit of doing that and enjoying doing that, and also enjoying when people on the left go, "You really shouldn't yell. Really shouldn't call people like fat or ugly, or make fun of them for being in a wheelchair or shit like that." And then they go, "Ha, you're triggered," blah 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 blah. But then there's also just like some people who look like absolute fucking garbage on the right, that then we want to point out the hypocrisy of them being like, "You're telling me that person's ugly? Like, have you fucking looked at yourself, my guy?" And then we are hypocrites because we were the ones that said we shouldn't do body shaming and stuff like that, So it's kind of like a rhetorical trap that the right sets for us. And honestly, I don't care. I don't care if some Democrats want to, engage in that stuff, because I'm just like, there's all different kinds of Democrats. There's all different kinds of people, and I'm not accountable for everything every Democrat says. Yeah. All right. Crazy Monsoon says, "Very few politicians are objectively good." Frankly, yeah, accurate. Jesse Lynn says, "Hot Wheels leading the way." Yeah, I get it, Jesse. Max W says, "It's literally a normal human emotion to judge." Yeah, it is, but it doesn't mean it's good. You know, we should all be striving to be better. More Christ-like. Hey Den says, "Elon Musk and Nancy Pelosi have the same goals on opposite sides." I do not believe that is accurate. Hey Den. Let's see here. Both parties are extremely evil. Oh, hey Den, you're a both sideser. Okay, but we need to root out all of the evil from everything. Hey Den, I don't know if you're a regular here. Your name seems familiar, but yeah, I do not truck with the both sides argument. The Democratic Party is way better than the Republican Party, like by a mile. Even if they didn't have a good platform, just by virtue of not doing the things that the Republican Party is currently doing, they are light years better. Zeep A Nation says, "I think your contrast is up too high." Yeah, my setup is weird, so I probably don't look great, and I keep on pumping down the contrast, and it keeps on not being enough. Marie, great to see you again. Chris Ortiz says, "Once the party turned, Trump turned. Look at all the people who once sided with him, 80s and 90s Dems." I believe that people sided with Trump back in the 80s and 90s is because he was rich and they wanted campaign finance donations, But yeah, policy-wise, there's absolutely no connection between even Democrats in the 80s and 90s versus what Trump is currently doing. S.E. Morgan, great to see you again. Did you see the stories that the GOP doesn't want to end the school pew-pews? They want to end schools. So I haven't seen that, but it tracks. They have been defunding schools for decades and doing nothing about, gun violence. Let's see here. Chris says, "Right the Dems." I don't really know what you mean by that. Notification says, "Thoughts on George Bush? George Bush Sr. or George Bush Jr.? HW or just W?" S.E. Morgan says, "They want to stop funding public education." Of course they do. Yeah, they want an educated populace who will believe their lies. Danny is Terrible says, "Can you believe this Don guy just said wars are only started by Democrats?" Somebody just said that in my chat? I didn't see that. That's a hilarious thing to say. Okay, Max W says, "The one who did 9/11." That's very funny. So yeah, notification. What do I think about George W. Bush? So every Republican president has been worse than the previous one. So like Nixon was better than Reagan, was better than George H.W. Bush, was better than actually George H.W. Bush wasn't that bad. But yeah, George W. Bush was worse than Reagan, and Trump is worse than W. Bush. W. Bush was not smart. He allowed Dick Cheney to run the government. He allowed biased, intelligence to allow 9/11 to happen. He put really inexperienced and unqualified, incompetent people in charge of government programs, which is the reason why people suffered in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina for so long. But he was full-throatedly telling Americans, do not be prejudiced against Muslims in America. They're not the ones who did 9/11. So, yeah. And Trump would fucking never, Trump would never go to bat for any non-white Christian person. Alrighty. Keith Jones says MAGA always talks about overthrowing an unjust government, but they won't do it when it is needed. Yeah, because an unjust government to them is one that supports minorities and poor communities and people that don't speak English and people with disabilities and shit like that. What they view as an unjust government is, there's a black president. Notification says, what are some good things that you think he did good? Again, I think that him advocating for people not to be prejudiced against Muslims after 9/11 was probably his high watermark. Alrighty. Turnsin says he goes to bat for Israel. LOL. Who does? George W. Bush? S.E. Morgan says, I vote Dem as a method to go farther left. Yeah, that's a perfectly valid thing there. Unknown says, this is an amazing administration. No need to overthrow it. Sure thing, Unknown. So yeah, that's not a question. So guess what? You are out of here. You know what else is not a question? Whether or not I'm fucking your mom. Notification says, what are the best and worst things you think Obama did? I mean, drone strikes is probably worst. I think that Obama was, because of the racism of America and because of the obstruction of the Republican Party, he was severely hampered by the things that he could accomplish during his 8 years. But the Affordable Care Act was transformative. The attitude that the administration had towards LGBTQ issues, the people that were staffed in the government were competent and generally doing their job in a pretty good way. Yeah, I think he was a very competent president, a great messenger, and the Affordable Care Act saved millions of lives potentially. I don't know what the numbers would be, but lots and lots. Right, WFRM says you look like Hassan. That's a fucking compliment and a half. That is a fucking good-looking fella right there. Notification says, what about the best and worst things about Trump so far? So Trump is bad. Notification, Trump is a very bad person. He's a very bad president. I am not going to waste my breath looking for silver lining in the giant pile of shit that is the Trump administrations and the Trump human being. Danny is terrible says, how are we 8 months into this best administration ever and we are going downhill faster than ever? Yeah, fucking unemployment is going up. Prices are going up. Inflation is going up. We are fucking joke on the world stage. China, Russia, and India are forming a new coalition to wrest control of the globe away from America. We're in a trade war with every fucking country. It's so fucking stupid. We're doing atrocities against immigrants, people who are here legally, who have done nothing fucking wrong. We're building concentration camps. We're cutting taxes for the rich while also cutting scientific and medical research. We're not researching kids' cancer anymore so that fucking Elon Musk can afford one more fucking diamond-crusted back scratcher. Like, what the fuck, guys? What the fuck? Right. Notification says, so can you not name one good thing about Trump? I could name one good thing, but I'm not going to. I don't think it's necessary to say that the dude who's stabbing me in the throat has nice eyes. Like, I don't see the value in that kind of centrist for centrism's sake nonsense. Beesjurger says, what is fascism? It's thrown around so often that I don't know the true meaning. So Beesjurger, there's kind of two technical definitions of fascism. There's like the definition of it's where everything in a country is being done for the government of that country. So if the government tells us that we need to be making more aluminum, then everybody stops what they're doing and they start making more aluminum. That's kind of like the technical definition of fascism. But there's a more nuanced definition that goes into what do fascist politicians, what have they done in the past, and how can we tell if a politician is being fascist based on what they do? And if you look at the things the Trump administration is doing, it is basically like all of those things, consolidating power by firing people who are not party loyalists. Let's see here, removing expertise, fighting against experts, denying the truth, calling the news fake news, attacking the press, attacking higher education, calling everybody your enemy like a vile vermin, like a rat. Dehumanizing your enemies, using the judiciary to go after your political enemies. Yeah, there's a whole bunch. There's a whole bunch. Devaluing education and expertise is a part of it as well. Yeah, I think that's it. There's a bunch. I'm probably forgetting a bunch, but those are like the big ones. CEO of the Home says the left did that too, though. They literally have not. CEO. What do you think is an example of the left doing all those fascism things that I just told you about? Oreo20 says, do you really think Trump is very sick? What do you think is wrong with him? I mean, he's old. He's really terrible looking old person, and sometimes those people live for a long time, and sometimes they don't. Alrighty, yeah, CEO of the Home. I'm still waiting for your reaction there. Jesse Lynn says, can't wait for a Dem to get in there and start doing the same thing. I mean, I don't want them to do fascist things, Jesse Lynn. Let's see here. Danny Terrible says, the way Trump's administration are treating human beings is vile. Completely agree with that. Carmine says, what would hanging out with dictators be under? Yeah, that's fascist. That's fascism right there. Notification says, so does a so-called fascist have to have dictatorial principles? I don't know. Like, people use different words for things that are very similar. So, like, you could say authoritarian, you could say dictator, you could say fascist, you could say oligarch, you could say kleptocrats. Like, there's all different words that are like have various shades of difference to them. Let's see here. All right, CEO of the Home, still waiting on you. Still waiting on you, CEO of the Home. Let's see here. Carson Pierman says Trump was charged with 34 felonies for something that no one else has ever been charged in a felony. How is that not fascist? So, Carson Pierman, what you did just there is a debate trick. What you did was you reframed something that happened in a way to make it seem like it's nonsensical, but it is sensical. Like, Trump did a lot of crimes, and the crimes that he did were very specific and novel, and so it required novel legal action. So, if you really, I suspect that you were just here to spread misinformation, but if you really want to get into why, all of those 34 felony counts and the other one and the other 90 indictments, the other 60-ish indictments that happened under Trump were perfectly valid and not lawfare, I'm happy to get into that. But again, I don't suspect that you actually give a shit. Carson Pierman says, you talked about how fascists use the legal system to persecute their opponents. How is that different? So here's my question to you, Carson. I'm fucking locked in on you, guy. Let me ask you this. So the way that you view the legal jeopardy that Trump was under during the Biden administration, and the way that you believe that was the Biden administration going after him because he was Biden's political opponent, how would that look different if Trump actually did the crimes? If Trump really did those 90-ish felonies that he was indicted for, how would that look any different than what we saw during the Biden administration? Tell me that. Can you go into more depth with that? I'm not talking about that being Biden. I'm saying that notification says, what were your expectations going into the election last year? I knew it was going to be close, but I suspected that Democrats would do better. Let's see here. He was charged differently than others because of who he was. Carson, I disagree with that. He was charged differently because of the realities of the situation. No other person has committed the kind of financial, tax, and electoral financing fraud that Trump did in order to win a presidential election, and then won that presidential election. So there were massive ramifications to that needed to be judged harsher than other people committing similar but not the same felonies. Mr. Swift Crashmore says, why do you keep ignoring my questions? I did not see them. Danny is Terrible says he got away with it because of who he is. That is a much more accurate thing to say, Carson Pierman. Not that he was charged differently because of who he is, but that he's been getting away with so many crimes because of who he is for his entire life, Carson Pierman says, what tax fraud did he commit? I'm not trying to debate or anything. I just want to learn. So for Trump's entire history as a businessman, he has been making money illegally by claiming massive losses on his tax forms, but also devaluing his companies on insurance forms so that he can pay the smaller taxes and pay the smaller fees, but get more tax returns for the losses and stuff like that. That was all part of the, what do you call it? That was all part of the case That the Stormy Daniels case, because those are part of the mechanisms that he used to try to hide the payment that he made to Stormy Daniels. Like he put it through like a various tax shelter or something, and then that was then part of the scheme that Trump utilized. Let's see here. Carson Pearson says, I'm also confused about the concentration camps you referenced earlier. Sure. So, Carson, the easiest way that I can describe this to you is that people who are experts in the Holocaust, people who have studied extensively what makes something a concentration camp, they are all unanimously saying that things like Alligator Alcatraz, these immigrant detention facilities that are being built here in America, CCOT in El Salvador, and whatever prison complexes that these immigrants are being sent to in El Salvador, in South Sudan and Libya, count as concentration camps. And that nothing since like World War II, during the Japanese internment during World War II, are even close to being concentration camps, the way that what Trump is doing is building concentration camps. Let's see here. Buffalo says Epstein criminal versus Diddy criminal. Should they be charged differently? I don't know enough about that to speak on it. Average Joe PG says just spent 3 hours logging pro-Palestine letters from the district's constituents. I don't think I can express how much this volume of participation matters. Yes, Average Joe PG is doing the fucking work. God bless you, my guy. And everybody else should be too. 6119 Luke says, do you believe the shit that's coming out of your mouth, or are the Democrats still paying you? The Democrats don't pay me. They've never paid me, Luke. And if you ask another question like that, then I'm going to boot you. Carson Pierman says, you just talked about opinions. I'm asking something concrete to back up your claims. My claims about what? That's really how every single business works, though. Bass Pro asks you to donate towards the outdoor fund so they don't have to pay taxes. Every big company does that. Carson Pearson, the thing you just said is not true. What the Trump did was worse. And here's the other thing. If there are other companies or billionaires who are doing what Trump did, fuck it, let's throw them in jail too. Like it's not okay just because everybody did it. Right. Carson Pierman says concentration camps. Again, people that study this, every expert in concentration camps is saying that these are concentration camps. So I'm not really sure what more you need from me. Like, do you need me to tell you what all the experts said? Do you need me to tell you their reasons for coming to that conclusion? Fletch Lives Again says, where would you reference MAGA people that believe the negative information about Trump is false? There's all different kinds of people in the MAGA coalition. Some people who are just part of an information sphere that doesn't tell them anything negative about him and tells a bunch of lies about how great he is. And then there are other people who are just like really shitty and love that he is fucking everybody over so that they can make more money, or fucking over brown people because they're racists. Like there's all different kinds. Tommy Fenn, CA, says the poor education system in the U.S. was a huge factor in Trump's election victory. Would you agree? 100% without question. The less education you receive, the more likely you are to vote Republican. That is a statistic. It does not mean that those people are stupider or more gullible, but maybe there are things that you learn when you get an education that make you less susceptible to the kind of misinformation and propaganda that gets people to vote for Republicans. Let's see here. Abdul Kaderi says economy is better when Republicans running the government or Democrats. Democrats, every single time. The data is in. It is only because of massive amounts of propaganda and misinformation funded by billionaires that we think that it is not the case. Mr. Swift Crashmore says education doesn't equal intelligence. That is accurate. 6119 Luke says you are propaganda without question, and you are blocked without question. You know what else is not in question? Whether or not I'm fucking your mom. Sorry, I had to reuse that one again today, but it was just right there. Guys? What am I supposed to do? Not eat the free pizza? Okay. SS Neo Youth says, hello to you, sir, again. Hello to you. Hello, hey, Skititu. Hey, Stakitito. This live is good just for me trying to say people's names. Excellent to see you guys. If you got questions about politics, put them in the chat. Okay, Danny's terrible. So just read an article about that too. Why are Dems better with money? Because Dems don't give billionaires massive tax cuts. We actually build the economy from the bottom up. That was what was That was what that's what Bidenomics was. That's what was going on during the Obama administration to some extent, to however much they were able to with a shared Congress. Let's see here. Lone Payne says, "Where do we go from here?" We do the work, Lone Payne. If you go to my Discord, I have a thread called The Work, which is things that people like you and me can do to fight against the Trump administration and the malicious Republicans and billionaire class that is trying to fuck us. That is effectively fucking us with ruthless efficiency. Mighty Python, anybody? Barry Field says, should people be required to have a high school diploma or a GED to vote? Barry, I think it's an interesting idea. It rings a little too close to some of the poll tests that were commonplace during Jim Crow that were specifically designed to keep Black people from being able to vote. But I do think that it's an interesting idea to require some sort of civic knowledge before a person can be involved in who runs the government. I'm not sold on it. I think it's interesting. I could be persuaded with a good argument. As it stands, if I had to vote on that today, I would vote no. But I'm open to an argument convincing me of its value. Sonia says, how do you think we should fix homelessness? The best way that we can fix homelessness is to build more housing and to build more affordable housing, to build more walkable cities so that people don't have to afford a car and a house, so that people can live far away from their jobs and not have to worry about, well, how am I going to afford the gas to fucking get over there? Tax the wealthy, build more housing, use the money that you get from the wealthy to subsidize housing for the homeless. When you buy houses and give them to homeless people, you are actually saving taxpayer money, because being homeless is a massive strain on public resources, with all of the visits to the emergency room that happen, shelters and food kitchens and things like that. It is massively less expensive to just buy homes and give them to people. The thing that we need to get over as a culture is somebody getting something for free and us being pissed about that because we had to pay for something. Like, I don't care. I don't care if my cancer treatment was expensive and yours was free. Like, better is better. How we can have better for everybody. That sounds like a better system to me. All right, SS Neo Youth says, may I participate in this academic lecture here? I have some information. Also, my computer is now rattling and pumping from side to side. It might break at any moment. Yeah, just put your question in the chat. It's the Rocketeer. Great to see you again. I think an issue with the diploma GED requirement is that not all high school civics teachers are the same. Mine was horrible. I didn't become interested or active until years later, and I still don't fully understand everything. Yeah, it's the Rocketeer. That is an excellent argument against. I knew that was rattling around in the back of my noodle somewhere, and yeah, that is why I'm a firm no vote on that issue. Belgariad, but maybe like a separate class. Where it's not like high school mandated, but it's like a free class that you can go to in, any district in America where that teaches you civics. Like, maybe that's the way to earn your vote, as opposed to making it like just luck of the draw. Just so happen, just if you get, whatever physics teacher is best. Oh no, looks like I'm getting a phone call, so I just lost my video on my live stream. That's a bummer. Yeah, I wonder if it's my wife calling or something. You know what? We're at about an hour anyway, so I should probably start wrapping up. So my apologies to everybody on... You know what? I can fix this quickly. Hold on a second. Okay. Hey, everybody, we're back. We're back, baby. Let's see here. How have the politics been treated lately, Jared Berenstein? Elections and bribes and shit. What else there is to do in politics? I mean, politics is a fucking nightmare. It's the worst. We need to pay attention to it so we can fix it, but goddamn is it depressing reading the news every day. Nostradamus says, do you think RFK knows that he's crazy? No, crazy people don't know that they're crazy. Carmine says, civics class with tax deduction incentives, LOL. Yeah, that seems pretty cool. I like that. A Tired Crafty Girl says, we don't have to earn our constitutional rights. That is accurate, A Tired Crafty Girl. We're just brainstorming here. I'm not dying on any of these mountains here. Stolaju says, hi, Jared, I'm doing a level politics, and I don't know much about politics. How to get better? I mean, it's a process, Stolaju. Like, there's a whole bunch of barriers to entry. There's a steep learning curve to learning about politics because people just throw these words around that we just kind of expect everybody to know what they mean already. And all of these like moments that happened in history. Like, if you don't know about like the Affordable Care Act fight, if you don't know about why the Supreme Court looks the way that it does right now, it can be really difficult to sort of like catch up. It's a little bit like reading a comic book in the middle of the run at like the 1000th episode, where you're just like, I don't understand who these people are, what their relationship is to each other. They're talking about some secret war that happened, some secret invasion or something, blah, blah, blah. So best thing I would say is just to do a little bit of a time, find a good news roundup podcast like What a Day. I think PBS or NPR has one as well that just basically tells you just like a little bit about everything that happens in the news today. And then hopefully you can start picking things up a little bit from there. I really like Pod Save America. I feel like they do a really good job of filling in the blanks for people as far as like what's going on in politics, but it's not too wonky or heavy. Like it really is very digestible. Right. Daniel Gossett says woke is misguided. Well, that's not a question, Daniel. Excuse me. Nostradamus says, what does woke mean to you? Being considerate of other people's feelings. Daniel Gossett says, should have to earn the right to vote. Well, I don't really agree with that. Let's see here. Bell Gariat says, interesting question. I'll be the judge of that. Should Congress make more the minimum wage or national salary average? I don't know how you would implement it, but I think that every politician should be forced to live the life of their most impoverished citizen in their district. I think that maybe that would incentivize them to make things better. It'd make it better lickety quick. Let's see here. A tired crafty girl says stop spending $1 million a day to occupy American cities. Yeah, that 100% would help the homeless population. We'd have that money to build some homes and shit like that. Making $1 billion should pay less in taxes than us, the working class. Colton, do you ship Trump and Biden or Trump and Musk? I don't ship Trump with anybody. I don't need those fucking nightmares. All right, scrolling down the bottom. Crazy Monsoon says woke also means having empathy for others. Something Trump clearly lacks. That's accurate. S.E. Morgan says Congress should make the average wage of the people in their poorest county of their states. Yeah, I think that's interesting. Yeah. All right, everybody, we are at about an hour, so I'm going to start wrapping things up. Put in your final questions now. But I want to thank everybody for the gifts, the likes, the shares, the questions, the comments. Just being here and giving me things to talk about means that I am able to do this show. And I'm trying to get more people to do the work. I'm trying to get more people on board with the project of unelecting every Republican and replacing them with a Democrat. And if we don't like those Democrats, replacing them with the better Democrats. So yeah, do the work, everybody. Check out the Discord. Discord is an excellent resource. Go to my bio and check out the links there to find all the good stuff like my Patreon and my store and my live show dates and a link to my Discord as well. So please do the work, everybody. We need more people doing the work. We need to recruit more people doing the work. You got to get your friends, and they got to get their friends, and they got to get their friends, and they got to get their friends. This is the only way that we can fight through this misinformation and propaganda machine territory that we're living in, is to just phone tree our way back to a shared reality where we actually fucking agree with what's going on in the world instead of fighting over, was it a drug ship that came out of Venezuela, or was it not a drug ship? Shit like that. Let's see here. You can support the show financially if you want, but you don't have to. Join the Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Buy things from my store, send gifts on TikTok or Twitch, or subscribe on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube. Like, all of that stuff helps us out a ton. Normal streaming schedule is Monday through Friday starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. And if there are any questions that you have going forward, whether it's about politics or getting involved or anything, then do not be shy. Reach out. Hit me up. My DMs are open. You can email me through my website. You can get in touch via my Discord. The project, this crusade that I am on of unelecting every Republican from president to dog catcher, it does not stop when the live stream is over. So if there's any way that I can be used as a resource to help you guys be part of the fight, then please use me. Use me, guys. This is what I am here for. All right, let's see here. All right. Voter registry. Brandon says everyone in Trump's circle is paid. I don't trust that specific MD. No, not at all. Yeah, probably if he's in Trump's circle. Viva Jess says you have to get educated and pass test to drive. Should be same for voting and Second Amendment. An argument could be made that is accurate. Viva Jess. But again, we're in really dicey territory where we are trying to infringe on a person's right to vote. Again, I am not saying 100% no. I just think it's a little dicey. A lot can be lost in the details. It really depends on what's the word I'm looking for? Implementation. Viva Jess. Let's see here. Trump's doctor said he was the healthiest president ever in office. Yeah, that is a blatant lie. S.E. Morgan says, do you ever do shows in New York State? I absolutely do, and check my website for when I'm going to be doing that. Sign up for my email list if you want information. Fletch Lives, again, says, how can you convince a MAGA person that the negative information about Trump is true? So Fletch Lives, again, that is an excellent question. So what you're asking is, how do you do the deep canvassing that actually changes minds? And there's a book that is written about that called The Persuaders by Anand Giridharadas, and I highly recommend that book. Short version is, you need to do more listening than talking. You need to ask a lot of questions. You need to meet them where they are. You need to find your shared agreements and shared reality and start building from there. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. You can't expect a person to be convinced in one conversation. So yeah, if that is something that you want to do, then God bless you. If you want to do the most productive thing, it might not be trying to switch a MAGA person. It might just be trying to get a centrist to vote for Democrat or a non-voter to vote for Democrat. But if you want to do that work, God bless you. Yeah, check out The Persuaders by Anand Giridharadas. The link to purchase that book is on my Discord, so you don't even have to worry about writing it down. Just go to the Discord. All right, everybody, I'm going to get out of here. But thank you again for being here, for your participation and your support. Do the work. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye.